Good. So some cautiously optimistic good news there. Good. Excellent. I think it's a given. We all understand that the majority of our industry is going to switch to digital through some kind of integrator, whether it's DCIP or Cinedigm or someone else. Most people will be acquiring digital equipment through an arrangement that's VPF financed through an integrator. That's because of the credit market issue got put on hold. And so that's one of the reasons that the possibility of self-financing seemed to loom large suddenly, because ours is a resourceful industry, and if you see an obstacle, you try to figure out a way around it. And so for some of our exhibitors, certainly not all, not even a majority, but for some of our exhibitors, having some possibility, some viable path to get the equipment, get the 3D screens installed, and begin showing movies digitally sooner than is possible when you're talking about the billions of dollars needed to do the entire industry, is something that, if it could be made to work, would be very important potentially for our industry. And I think one of the reasons this panel is important is because on this particular issue, it being one of the moving parts left on the question of digital cinema, there is also a lot of confusion out there, because when we're talking about self-financing, we're actually talking about referring to several different possibilities, several different arrangements. There is the self-financing where the exhibitor simply pays for the equipment that's self-financed and done over, and it doesn't rely on a VPF funded financing arrangement at all. That's going to be exceedingly rare in our industry, I think, but it's there, obviously, as an option. The other kind is a self-financing arrangement through an integrator, in which an integrator still assumes some of the functions that are in those integration agreements, monitoring, ensuring equipment quality, ensuring that movies play when they're supposed to, and so forth. And so the integrator continues to play that role, to collect the VPF payments from the studios, figure out who's owed what, send the VPFs then to the exhibitor who has self-financed. And there are a couple of species of self-financing within that arrangement through an integrator that we can talk about if we have time later in this discussion. The other kind that has arisen more recently is the direct-to-exhibitor arrangement. I say more recently, actually. Julian was going to want to correct me on that, because I think Fox has had a direct-to-exhibitor arrangement for quite some time. And one of the things that we want to get into with Julian and Mark in a moment is how their approaches to a direct-to-exhibitor arrangement might differ. But Mark's announcement to the industry not too long ago that they have a direct-to-exhibitor arrangement where they will pay VPS directly to the exhibitor and keep paying VPS up to a date certain, and thereby make some VPF revenue stream available to exhibitors who want to move now, was very exciting to the industry. Now we'll get into a moment why, and this is one of the confusions that we want to address, why it may not be the case that exhibitors can sign on with Mark and start collecting VPF payments immediately. So with that, I'll let Mark describe his, and Julian describe his arrangement with direct to exhibitors, and we'll be on.
Well, we had a lot of exhibitors come to us and say that they wanted to acquire the machines themselves, whether it was because they were a small circuit and couldn't get the attention of integrators, or they just wanted to control the equipment themselves. They didn't want to live up to the requirements of an integrator agreement. And a lot of exhibitors went out and bought these machines with no guarantee whatsoever that they would get payments from studios. So we took a look at that, and we had made many integrator deals, but we wanted to look at something in a completely different way. So we kind of went back to the drawing board. We took an 80-page agreement and cut it down to about 20. And because of the existing relationship between distributors and exhibitors, we were able to take that existing relationship and kind of just leverage it into a new kind of deal, where we could look at film rental, we could look at kid shows, we could look at midnight shows, we could look at all the different things that happen in a theater that are hard to address in an integrator agreement. And in an integrator agreement, there's also a lot of guarantees for financial entities, and there's a reason for that. The financial entities, the only way they can get paid back for these things is to have a guaranteed flow of cash on the equipment, whereas where an exhibitor can go out and borrow money just like they borrow money for seats or 35mm projectors or any other equipment in their theater is a general obligation, not just based on that projector. Now, I imagine that if you have the agreement, our agreement in your hand, when you go to the banker, it's probably a little bit easier sell to get some money. But if you look at our agreement, and it's out there, I know that you can get it from many sources, and if you can't find it, you can certainly send me an email and I'll get it to you. But it's just a completely different way of looking at it.
Julian, you want to briefly describe what your arrangement is and then undertake a little compare and contrast maybe?
Sure, you bet. Look, I think first of all, and you said it earlier, our company really in the United States and in fact around the world has engaged and concluded deals both with third-party deployment entities and also directly with exhibitors. In fact, where we stand today, if you total both of our exhibitor direct deals as well as deployment deals, we've committed to more than 60,000 screens around the world. And as soon as the credit markets loosen up a little, then I think when DCIP actually gets going, that really is the tipping point for all of the financing to move forward so that deployment can happen en masse. But specifically sort of addressing, the direct exhibitor relationship, our approach is as realistic as possible, which is to say that we don't think, and I give Paramount credit for, attempting to be innovative, but we don't think it's practical for an exhibitor to, invest in the cost of a digital projection system if they only have one, distributor on board to support it, because these plans and the conversion to digital require a critical mass of studios to support the digital projection. So what we look at is the reality of sort of where the market is today. If an exhibitor wants to install 3D systems, so just take that as an example, we actually have not a 20-page agreement, but a one-page agreement, where we would commit to the exhibitor that as soon as we conclude a full deployment agreement, leaving the exhibitor the option to either deal directly with us or to deal with a deployment entity, we will assure that exhibitor that they will get paid a virtual print fee because they've taken the risk and they've spent the money on installing a 3D system, which could get rolled into either a broader deployment plan directly with us or rolled into a third-party deployment agreement. And at that point, 20th Century Fox would agree to retroactively pay the VPFs for the bookings that we had on that screen with our 3D movies. And we have two pretty big 3D movies coming down the pike this year. So actually it's a really simple one-page letter that will allow any exhibitor, no matter how big you are or how small you are, to install a 3D system. And from our point of view, you can be assured that you'll be paid the VPF when the broader deal is done, which you can then take your time about reviewing your options, analyzing them, and doing what you think is smartest for you as an exhibitor. Our direct deployment agreements, the broader deployment plan, we don't believe that a 20-page document, really does enough. We believe in assisting in the financing of the digital cinema equipment. To us, it really is a financial transaction that we contribute toward the system cost, as does an exhibitor. And when it's paid off, we're done, and we don't pay any further VPFs. That kind of a document, requires a little more intensive work, but I think is more mature and will stand the test of time in terms of exhibitors having the opportunities to look at what their options are. So I think giving exhibitors the choice to put in a 3D system, be assured you'll get a VPF through a one-page document, and then giving an exhibitor a choice to deal with us directly on a full deployment agreement, which requires all of those financial transparency issues, or to adopt one of the third-party plans, I think gives them much more flexibility in terms of the larger scale deployment, and I think achieves both of the goals and leaves the decision in the hands of the exhibitor.